I was never an experienced hiker, but the call of the wild and the allure of the unexplored was too enticing to resist. On a crisp autumn morning, I decided to embark on an adventure, hoping to lose myself in the beauty of nature. But little did I know that the very essence of my adventure would become a nightmare etched in my memory. The forest seemed welcoming at first, the rustling leaves and the chirping birds providing a serene backdrop to my hike. It was all I had imagined it would be. The trail was relatively easy to follow until I encountered a fork that left me utterly disoriented. With no cell signal to consult my GPS, I made a choice that would forever alter my life. As I ventured deeper into the woods, the beauty of nature seemed to give way to a sense of isolation and unease. My heart began to race, and I was forced to confront the reality that I was lost. Nightfall descended quickly, the woods growing eerily dark. The haunting sounds of nocturnal creatures echoed through the trees. The chilling realization that I was far from any civilization gnawed at my nerves. It was as if the forest itself conspired to obscure my path. The trees seemed to close in around me, and the trail became nearly invisible. Hours passed, and my panic grew. My flashlight provided limited comfort, as the looming trees created eerie shadows that played tricks on my senses. Exhausted, I stumbled upon a clearing in the woods, and there, nestled among the trees, stood a remote cabin, its time-worn exterior testifying to years of solitude. My relief was palpable as I approached the cabin, believing that help was finally at hand. The cabin appeared empty as I knocked and called out. The wood creaked under my touch, and the door slowly opened, revealing an eerie stillness inside. The air was heavy, and I hesitated for a moment before crossing the threshold. The cabin had an unsettling ambiance, and it was clear that someone inhabited it, though there was no sign of life. The sparse interior was adorned with faded photographs and strange trinkets, as if the occupant had collected the remnants of a forgotten world. As I ventured further inside, a disheveled figure suddenly appeared, emerging from the shadows. His wild, unkempt hair and wild, vacant eyes gave me a chilling introduction to the cabin's inhabitant. I could see a wild, almost feral quality in his gaze, and his tattered clothing was a stark contrast to the order of the cabin. His voice trembled with paranoia as he declared that he didn't want any company. It was clear that he had lived in solitude for too long, and my presence had disrupted the fragile existence he had carved out in the woods. My heart pounded as the man, a reclusive hermit, stepped closer, his erratic movements a stark warning that I was not welcome. I realized that I had stumbled upon a living nightmare, and fear coiled around my every thought. The hermit continued to speak in disjointed sentences, his words making it clear that he wanted me gone. I knew that I had no choice but to leave, to escape the clutches of this deranged recluse. As I backed away from the cabin, the man's gaze followed me, his eyes filled with a desperate plea to respect his solitude. It was a plea I couldn't ignore, for my own safety, in his. The return journey through the dark woods was a harrowing experience, my steps fraught with anxiety. I felt like a trespasser in a world of shadows and nightmares, a world I was desperate to leave behind. Finally, I emerged from the woods and into the open, my relief almost overwhelming. The cabin, a remote enclave inhabited by a reclusive hermit, had been a haunting encounter that I could never erase from my memory. I had learned a chilling lesson about the depths of human isolation and paranoia, a lesson that still haunted my dreams. The experience in those woods was a nightmare I hope to never relive, a vivid reminder of the thin line between adventure and terror in the untamed wilderness.
I've always been an avid hiker, venturing into the woods whenever I could to escape the hustle and bustle of everyday life. It was on one of these hiking excursions that I stumbled upon something I'd never forget, a chilling encounter that still haunts my every thought. It was a crisp autumn day when I set out on an unfamiliar trail, eager for a new adventure. The dense forest swallowed me whole as I pushed deeper into the woods. The birds chirped above, leaves crunched beneath my boots, and the solitude of the wilderness wrapped around me like a comforting embrace. Little did I know that this time the forest would embrace me in a completely different way. The trail became narrower, more obscure, and I was soon surrounded by towering trees whose branches blocked out the sun. I noticed a subtle shift in the atmosphere, a sense that I was no longer alone in these woods. As I continued, the trail took an unexpected turn, leading me to a small clearing in the forest. In the center of the clearing sat an inconspicuous mound covered with leaves and branches, a secret hidden beneath the forest's veil. Curiosity got the best of me, and I began to take away the debris, revealing an old, rusted steel hatch. It was as if someone had purposefully buried this entrance. My heart raced as I hesitated, but the urge to uncover the mysteries that lay beneath was too strong to resist. I yanked at the hatch, its hinges creaking with the effort. The earthy smell of the forest was replaced by a damp, musty odor as the hatch swung open, revealing a dark and narrow stairwell that descended deep into the earth. A shiver ran down my spine as I peered into the abyss below. With trembling legs, I descended into the underground world, the darkness swallowing me whole. The stairwell led to a corridor where a dim overhead light provided faint illumination. My flashlight pierced the shadows, revealing a long, narrow passage with doors lining each side. As I ventured deeper, a low murmur echoed through the corridor, growing louder with each step. The voices became distinct, but what I heard sent chills down my spine. The people who inhabited this underground bunker were convinced that the apocalypse had already occurred. I cautiously approached one of the doors, and as I pushed it open, I was met with a group of disheveled individuals huddled together, whispering about the end of the world. Their eyes were white with fear, and their faces were pallid. I was the outsider who had stumbled upon their hidden sanctuary, and they regarded me with a mixture of terror and suspicion. One man stepped forward and spoke, his voice trembling. He explained how they believed the outside world had been ravaged by catastrophe, and this underground bunker was their last refuge from the horrors above. Their resources were dwindling, and the paranoia had taken hold of them. The encounter was surreal and unnerving. I realized that I was trapped in this underground world with these people who were clinging to their beliefs with desperation. The panic gripped me as I contemplated what I should do. I tried to reason with them, explaining that the world above was not as they believed. The apocalypse had not occurred. But my words fell on deaf ears, and they viewed me as an intruder, an outsider who threatened their sanctuary. Hours turned into days as I became a reluctant member of their group, my presence neither welcomed nor accepted. The atmosphere grew increasingly tense as their paranoia intensified. I knew I had to escape this nightmare, but the bunker was tightly sealed and the people were watching my every move. One fateful night, I made my move, waiting until the bunker's inhabitants were lost in their fearful discussions. I quietly slipped away from the roam, retracing my steps through the narrow corridor and up the dimly lit stairwell. As I pushed open the rusted hatch, the cold forest air greeted me like an old friend. I emerged into the clearing, my heart pounding, and quickly sealed the hatch behind me, obscuring the entrance once more. I never looked back, my steps carrying me far away from that underground nightmare. I felt a profound sense of relief to be back in the embrace of the forest, where the real world awaited me. That chilling encounter remains etched in my memory, a stark reminder of the thin line between reality and delusion. It's a story I've shared with very few, as the encounter in the woods was a nightmarish journey into the depths of human fear and paranoia, a place I hope never to revisit.
It was supposed to be a family bonding experience, our annual camping trip deep in the heart of the remote woods. But as the sun dipped below the horizon and cast long shadows through the towering trees, we couldn't shake the feeling that this year's adventure would be different. Our family consisted of me, my wife, Emily, and our 2 children, Lily and Daniel. We picked a remote spot for our campsite, far away from the beaten path. The wilderness was pristine, and the only sounds were the gentle rustling of leaves in the breeze and the occasional bird's call. But on the second night, that tranquility was shattered. We were huddled around the campfire, roasting marshmallows, when we heard faint, muffled voices echoing through the trees. It was like they were trying to keep their conversation hidden from anyone nearby. Emily and I exchanged puzzled glances, while our kids seemed oblivious, lost in their marshmallow roasting. Curiosity got the best of me, and I decided to investigate. I moved quietly through the woods, drawn to the distant whispers. It was as if a magnetic force compelled me to find the source of those hushed voices. The moonlight pierced through the leaves, illuminating a small clearing where I found a group of strangers. 3 men were gathered around a shallow makeshift grave, their faces tense and anxious. They looked up when they saw me, and their expressions turned hostile. I tried to speak, to ask them what they were doing, but one of the men held a finger to his lips, demanding silence. I could barely see into the hole they dug, but it was clear that something lay there, a lifeless form wrapped in a tattered sheet. The hushed voices now made sense, and a chill ran down my spine. Desperation filled the air as the men glanced between one another, as if weighing their options. It was then that I noticed their bloodshot eyes and torn clothing. Their appearance told a story of survival against the odds. It was as if they'd just emerged from a life-or-death struggle, and the body in the grave was their would-be assailant. My mind raced, piecing together the horrific puzzle. I understood why they'd come out here to bury a body, why they spoke in hushed tones. They had fought off someone who had tried to kill them, someone who had forced them to take a life in self-defense. As I backed away slowly, my heart pounding, the men remained tense, but said nothing. They didn't see me as a threat, but as a witness. The message was clear. We had to do this to survive. Don't interfere. I returned to our campsite, my face pale and filled with dread. The story I told Emily was too terrifying to be believed. But as we discussed it, we came to a grim conclusion. We had 2 choices. We could pack up our family and retreat into the night, leaving behind the chilling secret we'd stumbled upon, or we could stay and pretend we knew nothing. We chose the latter, not out of fear, but out of understanding. The woods had become a battleground for those desperate men, and it wasn't our place to judge or meddle in their horrifying struggle. We held our children close and tried to forget the nightmare that lurked just beyond the trees. That night, as we lay in our tent, we couldn't escape the unease that washed over us. We listened to the haunting echoes of shovels against the earth, burying the dark secret that had brought those desperate men to the wilderness. Sleep didn't come easily, and as the embers of our campfire faded, we were left with a terrifying truth. Sometimes, survival means doing the unthinkable, even if it means burying a body in the heart of the woods.